everyone. I'm going to do a demonstration on what attribute selectors are for CSS. I know I'm a little late getting this ready to the team and to teachers out there, but since today the kids are at school, this is my time to go over it. So for our lesson this week, we each chose topics, and I chose attribute selectors, mostly because it was the next one on our short list. But what an attribute selector is in CSS is it is effectively you're doing something in brackets, and that has the same specificity as writing a class. What that lets you do is it lets you stylize things without needing to do extensive class writing in CSS, as well as do some powerful things that you would normally need JavaScript assistance for. Anything that you can do in straight CSS without relying on JavaScript, that just helps because it'll process better because it'll process natively. CSS just works. You won't have any delays or down problems, and you won't have to worry about the overhead of having much JavaScript. Similarly, by using attribute selectors instead of classes, this lets you have just less specific things throughout your CSS, which it helps a lot. It helps to make sure that your overrides are consistent. It helps to make sure that your cascade is predictable. So this is my live demo of this page here, but effectively, attribute selectors are things written in this format. And so the main three is you have the present selector, and that'll be anything you write in just a bracket alone, and that'll match any element that has that attribute regardless of its value. This is usually useful for styling things that are either on or off, buttons, required fields, things like that. Down here, I show off the demo with present exact match, where I said presence is disabled, has any element that matches the disabled attribute. So down here, I have marked disabled button. It's disabled, has a very different styling from a regular button. The exact match is where you write whatever the attribute is equals value, and it'll be anything whose attribute matches that exactly. So in this example, if your type is email, you'll have a different email box than if you didn't have type email. And then you can also do some more powerful things with this. One example is doing substring matches. So you can add a caret before that equal sign to do a prefix. You can add a $sign to change it to a suffix, and you can add a asterisk if you want it just to contain it. So prefixes are usually best for protocols, things that start with consistently, in this case, HTTPS. So I showed off substring matchers here. This external link is styled differently than an internal link because it has an HTTPS on it. Meanwhile, I styled this PDF file. Looks different because I use the $sign. Since it ends with .pdf, it has different stuff on it. And then in this particular case, I did a asterisk equals to mail to, since it contained mail to in it. I combined it with before, so I told it to add an email thing before it, so you can see it there. And I'll show you the CSS at the end. But that lets you style anything in the document that starts with HTTPS, that ends with .pdf, that ends with .docs, that ends with .txt. Any extension you want to have look differently from other links. And those are the ones that you'll come across most often. Another example with container selector is you can combine this with classes or with any other thing when you have a large group of stuff, where in this particular case, if the class contains the word grid in it, so this is demo grid container, it has grid anywhere in it, it automatically styled it on a grid. So this is just a simple item 1, item 2, item 3. There's no special things here, but I had it show you, the padding that I used and the margins that I used, so that you can see how it styled out a grid. And this means I don't have to write different CSS for all the different grid containers if I wanted to have a bunch of different classes for each type of grid I had throughout the document. I could do most of the styling just here, and then I could do specific styling for the demo grid container if I wanted to. You can use other things, but this is an example of why you might use the contain selector. And then sometimes you need to be a little more specific. So if you're using white space, you can use the about caret. I don't actually remember what that's called. I call it the about caret. In this particular case, if it'll match if it contains the word active, even if it's space separated. So in this particular case, this is an active note versus an inactive note. This lets me ignore spaces for that. So this paragraph has the word active in its class list, and this paragraph is not. You can also use that for hyphens. This one lets you combine whether it does or doesn't follow, whether there is or isn't followed by a hyphen, and that's most often used in languages. So in this particular example, the language could be EN, it could be EN-US, it could be EN-UK, etc. will all be styled as though it had the EN selector. So in this particular comparison, we're using quotes. This text uses English style quotes. I'm using the Q here. So this text uses English style quotes, whereas this text uses the French style quotes, whereas this one uses the Japanese style quotes, entirely because it's using lang, en, jp, and fr. You can also style them based on data that's stored, so you can match their individual values. This is very helpful if you wanted to have like, oh, a success card looks like this, a warning card looks like this, or an info card looks like this. It's the same data theme equals warning. So down here, data theme equals warning, data theme equals success, data theme equals info. If you didn't want to be using classes, but you want to be matching based on data. Because you can do this for any data stored, which makes it really, really useful to find things. You can also choose things that make things case sensitive or case insensitive. By default, all of the CSS is case sensitive. That means if you want something to match open exactly, you would have to type OPEN, all lowercase. But if you add an I inside the attribute selectors, then it becomes case insensitive. So you can be open, 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 however you want to have it. Technically, there's also an S. You could use an S for case sensitive. That makes it, but that just switches it back to the default. You don't really have to pay attention to that, and a lot of browsers don't seem to support it. My browser doesn't actually support the S one, so I don't know if you should write with it, but for completeness, S exists. And then, as a reminder, since this uses the same specificity as classes, this helps you to override things. So in this particular case, my data variant is danger. So instead of using the regular button class, instead of using the regular button styling, this, like this one up here, if someone tried to click this button, it gives them a warning and a shake. And that's my demo. If you have any questions about how attribute selectors work, please let me know. Attribute selectors, I think, are a really good tool in our toolbox. It's a whole lot better than writing, it's a whole lot better than writing class equals demo grid container, class equals demo grid container 2, class equals demo grid container 3, and having dozens of classes throughout your CSS that really clog things up, while still allowing you to style the cascade predictably. Anyway, thanks so much, and I hope that you learned something from this and that you can use attribute selectors to make yourself a better coder.